We had some big news last week, and I think maybe it's time for a wellness check around here. Are we all still okay? Are we all still here? So we had some big news in the world of gold last week, specifically in gold demand. China paused their buying after 18 months of consecutive purchases. They've been averaging 18 tons of gold a month before finally trailing off. Now, none of us know if that means they just took a month off, they're avoiding the normal reporting channels, or they're done buying for a while. We don't know. Regardless of the case, though, the effect on gold price was both knee-jerk and it was significant. We saw a 3.5% drop in gold price in one day. Now, that's a big deal, but the question is how much of that story is actually important? Before we get back to it, if you're looking for gold or silver, check out SD Bullion. New customers even get gold and silver for spot. It's sdbullion.com/new. So two things pushed gold price on Friday. A jobs report that came in hot and news that China was pausing its gold buying. Now, both of those are extremely temporary factors. And in the comments, we were told there was another one, but we're going to hold on that for a minute. At the time of recording, gold is back above $2,300. It's trading somewhere around $2,315. But we get a Fed press conference tomorrow. So dwelling on gold price today doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Whatever Powell says is going to affect the market again. So another temporary factor. Now, last week's news already feels a little bit like last week's news, and there are a few reasons for that. Now, just quickly, we've all probably heard of Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants of time management. You have urgent and important. You have not urgent but important. You have urgent but not important. And then you have not urgent, not important. And you only want to focus on the first quadrant, the things that are both urgent and important. Well, the same thing goes for attention around here, and the people making the videos know that they have to present it a certain way. They need to present things as being both urgent and important, so the formula for a lot of these video titles and thumbnails becomes something like the end is near. Silver's surging, gold is crashing. These all feel both urgent and important. The problem, of course, is that none of them are. Within a few days, we can all see that it was about 99% spin. So this idea that we get news that's presented as important, it's presented as urgent, but it isn't actually either of those things is important to think about around here. Now, that 3.5% drop in gold price, that was important and that was urgent to me because I was able to buy a gold coin on sale this weekend, but in the overall scheme, it really isn't having much impact. Or if it does, we just don't have any way of knowing yet. Now, if you look at buying gold like an ongoing thing, you spread your purchases out, and you try to line some of that up with these price drops, well, over time, you start to realize that it's your personal gold buying strategy, not China's, that turns out to be important. Now, don't get me wrong, China's decision to buy or not buy will have a real impact on gold because of its impact on demand. We just never know until after the fact. But one of the reasons that gold was rallying so hard is that central bank buying has been immediately locking up about a third of global gold production. And that's at a time when gold mining is getting harder. Maybe you saw over the weekend that CNBC ran an article saying gold mine production only increased 0.5% in 2023. That's not much considering all this new demand. This year, it's more like 4%, and I would guess that that's going to continue. It just took time to ramp up. Now, I can't personally say for sure. I just know that if the demand is there, more people are going to devote more time to finding a way to fill it. Now, I think that's enough of a recap of central bank buying over the past 2 years, China's buying over the past 2 months, but I want to repeat a stat that might have been buried in last week's video. We've seen reported central bank buying figures for 1 quarter this year, and that quarter just happens to show that net gold purchases are the highest on record. The prior record quarter was just the one previous, quarter 4 of 2023. So if we want to focus on central banks, that's a hell of a stat, one we shouldn't overlook, but the underlying reason for that buying is the part that's actually important. China has been buying for a reason that is not going to send the price of gold down over time. They're buying to diversify away from the dollar, which will actually do the opposite. It'll send the price of gold up over time. Now, their decision to pause in May doesn't change the course of gold, and any change to the dollar is not going to happen in a week or a month. It's going to happen over years and decades. So my point in all these videos is that it's a much better idea to check in on our own plans, our own progress, because there is going to be this news every week. The video is telling us about urgent, important decisions that are being made on the world stage that probably won't actually amount to anything outside of a 3-day window. Or if they do, they're just one small but heavily exaggerated part of the bigger picture. So I mentioned that something came up in the comments of last week's videos. Well, one of those videos was explaining the actual causes of the price rally. What we've been seeing has been based on additional demand from central bank buying rather than a simple case of the US dollar losing value. Well, if you go through those comments, you'll see that some of them warn about everything changing June 9th. That would have been last Sunday. Saudi Arabia wasn't going to be renewing the petrodollar deal. And honestly, I had to go look that one up a little bit because we've been seeing the US-Saudi deal being held up for weeks now on the Israeli-Palestinian peace talks, but none of the big news outlets mentioned this looming termination of that deal. Now, I know it's popular to not trust anything the media outlets publish, but you won't find a single mention of the June 9th deadline on a single financial news site. And that's really strange. You have to go to Twitter or X, where there's really no way to verify a story, or, of course, here on YouTube, just go to any Doomer channel. Now look, it's going to be no surprise that the reliance on the US dollar is changing. You'll quickly find that news of the possible end of the petrodollar deal, though, is not anything new. It's been coming up for 20 years, probably about the time the newspapers started publicly indexing their content. So nothing new about it. The petrodollar, though, seems important, and June 9th seemed urgent. So this is something we're going to be talking about more here once we know more. Right now, though, the information is garbage. Bitcoin.com was running this story hard. They were saying Bitcoin might be a possible means of payment to actually take the place of the dollar in some cases, which just seems ridiculous to me. But they were saying there would be a price spike on the exit, so June 9th. Well, it's 2 days after the 9th now, and Bitcoin is down. The USD is up if you look at the DXY. So we can all see the shift that's happening, whether you do YouTube full-time or not. The only problem here is that we have clowns taking creative license with facts, telling us everything is happening 100 times faster than it actually is. So our own stats are always going to be what are most important. I had a 7-year streak of making monthly gold purchases before even taking a breather in 2020. And the month or two that I took off, I made up for as soon as I could. So there was a lot of crazy news in that period of time, but I had made a plan. I'd cleared up that budget, got rid of some unnecessary expenses, and then I just stuck to it. And to me, that's what's important, sticking to your plan. Now, none of us on our own are going to move any markets with individual gold buying practices. You're not going to see videos if Jeff or Terry pause their purchases for a month. But seriously, what's more important to you, your own progress or China's? So the recommendation around here, if I'm making them, is to focus on your own plans. Just harden your finances against long-term effects. And I'm trying to get some content in each week that really has nothing to do with the knee-jerk stuff. The kind of video that probably only gets about a third the views of this urgent, important stuff because planning doesn't seem urgent. But I can tell you it's important. Now, YouTube only queues up content from that first quadrant, and unfortunately there are jokers out there gaming it, giving us the video equivalent of a flaming bag of poo that we need to stomp out. So if I can ask a favor, it's to just take a look at some of that new style video content, because I think owning gold can have a profound impact for us, and I think it's good to cover some of the basics. So let's call it good there. Let us know what you think, if you're buying around a goal, how you're doing on it so far, and what you're up to right now, if all this new news is affecting your plans. And then while you're in the comments, be sure to hit that like button if you found any of this interesting. Be sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on if you want to hear more on the topic. And if you're still here, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.